Hey, this is Dean Soto. I think we're recording. This is Dean Soto with Freedom in 5 Minutes, and we're in part 2 of this series that I want to do on developing better delegation skills. And in this video, we're going to answer the question, how do I stop being overwhelmed with everything that needs to get done? And this is something that is a huge mindset shift for people. Okay, and a lot of the time, it's a self-inflicted wound. One of my friends, Oliver, he heard it. He's a systems consultant. And he heard this phrase that was really cool, and I always use it whenever I can. But he heard it for somebody else. But essentially, the phrase is, "You're too busy to sharpen your axe because you're too busy cutting down trees to sharpen your axe." There you go. You're too busy sharpening trees. Sharpening. I just totally messed that up. But guess what? This is authentic. We're trying to make this authentic as possible. You're too busy cutting down trees to sharpen your axe. And what happens if you don't have time to sharpen that axe? Eventually, you're going to be spending so much energy boom, 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 trying to chop down that tree, but you have a blunt object that's really not doing anything. It feels like you're doing something. In fact, you're probably spending more energy than you would otherwise, but because your axe is not sharp, it's doing nothing. It's doing nothing for you, right? And so that's the mindset that a lot of business owners have. You get stuck into the day-to-day, and we talked about this in the last episode, that we have this idea that nobody else can do what we do, right? Nobody else can do what we do. At least we think that's the case, because we might have a very complex system or a very complex thing in our mind that we say there's no way that this can be put into a documented process, a documented system, or something of that nature, when in fact it can. It just takes a lot of little processes to make it happen. Okay? A lot of little processes to make it happen. In fact, there was this one customer who essentially thought that was the case, that there's no way that anybody can do the sales process. There's no way we can get a virtual systems architect, somebody who literally does not have necessarily any sales experience, especially in the financial services realm, and then actually have them do inbound sales off of what we have them do. But what happened was, now keep in mind, so here's how the sales process went for them. So the business owners would go and do these presentations. They fly to Hawaii or to Memphis or to all these different places. They do a presentation that showed how to build cash flow, whether it be with turnkey real estate or with some kind of promissory note or whatever it was. They would go do these presentations, have a call to action at the end to fill out a questionnaire. Fill out either a questionnaire at the event itself, or to go online and to fill out that questionnaire. And what happened is they had a really, really good presentation, and so you'd get a lot of people who would go to the website and start filling out the questionnaire. Okay. Well, prior to having a virtual systems architect, or prior to having anything documented, any process, what would happen is they would fly back. They would fly back to wherever they're going. So they spend 1 or 2 days flying back. Then they would get back to being settled in at their business. And then they would reach out to the customers who did the questionnaire. If you're in sales and marketing at all, you know that the longer you let a customer sit around, the colder and colder and colder and colder they get, right? And so they would have this huge drop off. They would have these people who were hot, ready to go. And then by the time they got to, it's 4 or 5 days later, by the time they actually reached out to the customer, and the customer was, they were ready to talk to the customer was already kind of like, dude, you guys took 5 days to get to me, right? Well, that's crazy. And the business owner in their mind was thinking, well, there's nobody that can do what we do. I mean, we look at all the information that they put into the questionnaire. Then we develop a strategy, and then off of that strategy, we then are able to base our price, our either retainer or actual fulfillment price off of how much they were going to get off of that strategy. And so there's no way anybody could do that except us. Not even somebody who's been in the company doing stuff for a while. There's just no way, right? It's too complicated. All this strategy, it's just way too complicated. Or so they thought, right? So what they ended up doing was, one, they hired me as a systems consultant, and actually my buddy Oliver as well. And what the cool thing that happened is that we developed an allocation. There was like a allocation Excel spreadsheet that somebody could use, punch in the numbers, and based off of what numbers were put into this allocator, it would give you essentially three strategies. Like it would say this one out of three strategies. So it would say this strategy would be the best for this person. And it was spot on. Okay. So now that was in place, what was able to do is now document what happens. How do you fill out that actual allocation? When someone fills out a questionnaire, how do you fill out that actual allocation? Right? Because there was two things that would happen. One, the information would be either correct or it'd be incorrect, right? So what would happen? Well, we needed somebody to call. You needed somebody to call the person, the prospect, and verify that all of that information was actually truly correct. And the cool thing about it, too, is that it's a touch to the prospect. And because it's a touch to the prospect, they felt like they were being taken care of, right? And so they wouldn't get from hot to cold to colder to colder. Immediately, they're getting a call just to verify information. They're not even being sold to at the time, right? So there was the process of calling them and verifying information. Well, once you verify the information, there's the process of putting that into the allocation spreadsheet, right? All right. So once all of those little processes were documented, so they hired VSAs, they had virtual systems architects, so we just had to do videos, and those documents, those standard operating procedures were just created 5 minutes at a time, right? Five, maybe 10 minutes at a time. And so we didn't have to spend hours and hours and hours and hours doing it. They had virtual systems architects, and they still do to this day. And so all of those processes were written down, all of them, for how to fill out the allocation spreadsheet, how to do this, how to do that, so that anybody, whether it be a virtual systems architect or anybody else, anybody off the street could, so as long as they had access to the form that the people filled out, they can go from inbound lead who filled out the questionnaire, contact the lead. They would have the phone script. They would know exactly what to say for the lead, say to the prospect to verify all the information is correct. And then from there, they would enter in the information into the allocator. Then they would contact the prospect again and give the draft allocation, the draft strategy, and say, if you'd like to move forward, it's going to be 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, and this is what we see as a return on your investment over the next year, and that is obviously going to be more than what they're paying in the fee. And so now, something that was super complicated, that was taking 5 days to even just reach out to the customer, went from 5 days to boom, immediately, and anybody could do it, and they started collecting money. So the virtual systems architect or anybody who just followed the process was now collecting money from the customers, when it would take 5 days to do that before, and a lot of the times it wouldn't even happen. You'd have a huge drop off because they started going cold, right? So what was the better delegation there? The better delegation was developing the process and then putting somebody in that place and saying every time you get a new form filled out and it's an incoming form and you see it come in, you need to do this process, this process, this process, and this process. Everything's written down, but that's how you do it. And so there was not this training back and forth. There was not this massive amount of financial strategy training that was needed. Once the customer signed and moved forward, then they would actually meet with one of the owners or one of the strategists that were able to totally build that strategy. But that didn't happen until they actually paid sometimes $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 in fees up front. And so they could be out. The owners could be out doing all of these different presentations, and funnel people into these questionnaires and not have to worry about it. They just see money coming in, right? That's delegation. That's one of the better ways to delegate and to not get through and not to have that overwhelm. Because before they were overwhelmed, they literally could not do anything for 5 days. They were overwhelmed with the events, with talking with clients where they were at when they were at the events. They were overwhelmed with all this stuff, but they were able to get past that overwhelm through a process and putting somebody in charge of that process, so that they can just literally just hand it off. So a big thing to not being overwhelmed is to have that step-by-step process so that you can delegate it off to somebody without them even having to come back and ask a ton of questions. It's so detailed that they're not coming back and asking those questions, so you're not getting overwhelmed. Sure, it sucks up front, like I said in the last video, sucks up front doing it if you're not doing the freedomin5minutes.com method. It sucks, but it's still worth it. I mean, you might be spending hours to make it happen, but then you never have to do it again, right? You sharpened your axe. Now go cut down trees. Whereas if you do the freedomin5minutes.com method, you can do it 5, 10, 15 minutes and have it done for you, and then have somebody actually do it, the actual task for you. Okay. So that's how you deal with overwhelm. The more processes you have, the more that you can delegate, getting past that mindset of only I can do it. And just the more processes you have, the more that you can offload. And so when new things come in, you get a new customer or whatever, you can actually hand that customer off to your virtual systems architect or to somebody who's on your staff or whatever, so that you beat that overwhelm. So hopefully that's helpful. You're going to hear me over and over and over beating standard operating procedures, processes, systems into your head, because it is so powerful. It is something that really is going to help your delegation skills. It's something that's going to help you to do. I mean, rather than having to go back and forth training, you can just hand it off to somebody. They can do the process. If they do have a question, it's usually a quick question. It's something very, very minor, very small, but you're able to then offload it and get rid of that overwhelm that you are probably feeling right now. So, especially if you're listening to this. So this is Dean Soto, Freedom in 5 Minutes. Go check out freedomin5minutes.com. There's a masterclass. There's a business process scorecard there. Tons of information on how to get past overwhelm and things like that in that masterclass, and how to even just do the Freedom in 5 Minutes method. And excited for you. If you need anything, please let me know. Dean at freedomin5minutes.com. But until then, go check out freedomin5minutes.com. Start getting your processes done in 5, 10, 15 minutes, usually more around 5 minutes at a time over at freedomin5minutes.com. And you never have to get overwhelmed again. All right, I'll see you in part 3 of this series in the next video. See ya.